The monitors beeped like dying birds. Leo Moretti's 8-year-old body twitched against the tubes and wires, and the air in the VIP ward felt heavy, like the room itself knew a child was slipping away. Dr. Robert Ellison barked orders at nurses, throwing around his decades of reputation like it was enough to save a life. To him, this was just another case he couldn't quite crack, but wouldn't admit defeat on. He hated defeat more than death itself. At the edge of the room, a skinny 15-year-old girl stood clutching a battered notebook. Her sneakers were scuffed, her hoodie faded, her dark curls escaping the messy bun she'd tied that morning. To the doctors, she looked like a child who'd wandered into the wrong place. "Get her out," Ellison snapped without even glancing at her. "This is no place for janitors' kids." Marcus Carter, the hospital janitor, shifted uncomfortably but didn't move. His daughter, Aaliyah, Ollie to him, had that look in her eyes again. The same look she wore when she'd aced college textbooks at 12. The same look she wore when she refused to believe she was less than anyone else in these halls. Ollie's voice sliced the tension. "It's not a disease. He's been poisoned." The room froze. Nurses blinked. Even the ventilator seemed to hiss louder. Ellison turned, finally looking at her, his face folding into amusement. "Poisoned? Young lady, this is medicine, not one of your TV dramas." Ollie stepped forward, her chin high, notebook trembling slightly in her hands. "Thallium. It mimics a rare genetic disorder. The seizures, the hair loss, the nerve damage, it all lines up. You're too busy chasing exotic diseases to see the obvious." A low, dangerous voice cut through the room. "If she's right, test it." Victor Moretti, Leo's father, stood at the bedside, his expensive suit jacket abandoned on the floor, his powerful frame hunched over his boy. To the city he was a shadowy king, businessman, politician, crime lord, depending on who you asked. But right now he was just a father watching his only son die. Ellison scoffed but waved at a nurse. "Fine. Run the heavy metal panel. Satisfy the janitor's daughter so we can get back to real medicine." Ollie didn't flinch. She held Victor Moretti's gaze, and for a flicker of a moment, the most feared man in the city looked at her like she was the only one in the room who mattered. An hour later the lab results came back. Thallium, 15 times higher than normal. Ellison's face drained of color. The room erupted, nurses rushing, orders shouted, antidotes prepared. But the noise didn't matter. The moment belonged to Ollie. Victor Moretti crossed the room in 3 strides. He knelt, before a janitor's daughter, took her trembling hands and said in a voice that made even the doctors shiver, "You saved my son. Name what you want." Ollie's throat tightened. Everyone expected her to ask for money, for a scholarship, for a way out. But her voice came steady, sharp as glass. "Find out who did this. Because if they poison Leo, they'll do it again." The hospital tried to move on, to pretend a teenager hadn't outsmarted them all. Ellison doubled down on arrogance, acting as though the lab result had been his idea all along. But Ollie saw through the facade. And she wasn't done. She started watching, listening. Sitting in corners where people forgot she was there. She memorized shifts, supply deliveries, the little gaps in the system. And she noticed one name more than any other, Dr. Evelyn Hart. Beautiful, brilliant, untouchable. Hart had been the attending the night Leo first collapsed. She smiled too easily. She deflected too quickly. One night, Ollie hid in a supply closet with a cheap recorder. Through the thin wall, she heard Hart's smooth, calm voice. "Make it look accidental. A mislabel, an overdose. Don't drag the press into this." Ollie's pulse thundered in her ears. She clutched the recorder until her knuckles turned white. This wasn't negligence. This was murder. She played the recording for her father in their tiny kitchen that night. Marcus shook his head, fear written in every line of his face. "Ollie, you don't understand who you're up against. People like her don't fall. They bury anyone who tries to touch them." Ollie's jaw tightened. Then let's be harder to bury. Days later, Victor Moretti sat in a darkened office, his men standing silent at the walls. Ollie placed the recorder on his desk. Hart's voice filled the room. When it ended, Victor leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing, jaw flexing. "She tried to kill my son. And she thinks she can walk away." His gaze shifted to Ollie, assessing, calculating. Then he gave the smallest nod. "You have courage. More than most men I know. We'll do this your way. Plain. Final. No more children die." The trap was simple. Cameras hidden near the service elevator. A pharmacy tech sliding an unmarked vial into a supply tote. Hart retrieving it with the casual ease of someone who'd done it before. When the footage played in the hospital boardroom, when Hart's recorded voice filled the air, "Make it look accidental," the doctors who had sneered at Ollie suddenly couldn't meet her eyes. Hart didn't break. She laughed. "You fools. Do you know how many families wanted their problems solved? Do you know how many legacies I've preserved?" Victor Moretti stood, his shadow stretching across the table. His voice was low, final. "You tried to kill my son. You don't walk away from that." The board members shifted, sweating, realizing this was bigger than reputation. Bigger than lawsuits. This was rot, and it was finally dragged into the light. Hart was arrested that night. And as Ollie watched from the hallway, Marcus's arm around her shoulders, she felt something deeper than pride. She felt the shift of an entire system cracking open. She had saved a boy. But more than that, she had started a war. The news broke like wildfire. Renowned pediatrician arrested in poisoning plot at St. Gabriel Medical Center. By dawn, the story was everywhere. On TV, on Twitter, whispered in hushed tones by nurses who couldn't believe what they'd seen. Dr. Evelyn Hart, the woman whose smile had been on hospital brochures, was handcuffed and led past cameras. But for every shocked voice, there were quieter ones. Wealthy families, old money legacies, men in suits who had shaken Hart's hand at charity galas. They knew the truth, or at least pieces of it. And now that truth had a name, a face, and a 15-year-old girl who refused to stay quiet. Ollie sat on the floor of her father's apartment, stacks of hospital records spread out around her like puzzle pieces. Marcus hovered near the window, blinds half drawn, his nerves frayed. "Ollie," he whispered, "this isn't just Hart. She was doing this for years. She had protection. Money. Powerful people. You can't fight them all." Ollie didn't look up from her notes. "I don't need to fight them all. Just enough to make the rest afraid." Marcus rubbed his temples. "Do you hear yourself? You're 15. They'll crush you." Ollie finally met his eyes. "They already tried. They laughed at me. They called me nothing. But Leo's alive because I didn't listen. And if I stop now, more kids die." Marcus had no answer. His daughter's voice carried a weight far beyond her years. The courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed as Hart was let in, her designer suit pressed as though nothing had happened. She didn't look broken. She looked angry. The prosecution laid out the evidence. The recording, the footage, the payment trails. Each piece landed like a hammer. The jury scribbled notes. Reporters whispered furiously into their phones. But Hart wasn't done. When it was her turn to speak, she leaned forward, voice smooth as silk. "You think I'm a monster? I saved more families than you'll ever know. Fathers who didn't want scandals, mothers who couldn't handle children born sick, heirs too weak to inherit. I gave them peace. I gave them clean legacies." Gasps rippled through the room. The judge banged his gavel for order. But Hart smiled, unflinching. "And you let me. You paid me. You thanked me. Don't pretend your hands are clean." It was a masterstroke, turning the accusation back on the very people watching. Suddenly whispers spread. If Hart was right, how deep did it go? Ollie sat in the gallery, heart pounding. She leaned toward Victor Moretti, who had insisted on attending every hearing. "She's trying to drag them all down with her." Victor's jaw tightened. "Let her. The more she talks, the more cracks we'll see." That night, Ollie released the second recording. Not to the court but to the press. Hart's voice again, cold and deliberate. "Make it look accidental. Don't drag the press. Keep it tidy." The audio spread across social media like a storm. Within hours, hashtags trended, #Justice for Leo, #Doctor of Death. Families who had lost children at St. Gabriel began speaking out. Old cases resurfaced. Complications that suddenly didn't look so accidental. By morning, the city was in uproar. Hart wasn't a lone wolf anymore. She was the face of corruption that reached into boardrooms and bank accounts. And at the center of it all was a girl the world had tried to ignore. Marcus watched his daughter sit for an interview on national television. Ollie wore her school blazer, sleeves slightly too short, her voice steady under the bright studio lights. "They said I didn't belong in that hospital. That my father was just a janitor and I was just a child. But truth doesn't care who speaks it. Leo is alive because I wasn't afraid to say what I saw." The host leaned forward. Aaliyah, what do you want now? Ollie didn't hesitate. I want every family to know the truth. I want hospitals to stop covering for bad doctors. And I want kids who look like me, poor kids, black kids, kids no one believes, to know that their voices matter. The studio fell silent. For once, the entire country listened. When the verdict came weeks later, the courtroom was silent enough to hear the judge's breath. Dr. Evelyn Hart, guilty on all counts. Hart didn't flinch as the sentence fell. Life in prison. She turned once in the courtroom, her eyes locking with Ali's. A smile ghosted across her face, not of defeat but of warning, as if to say, this isn't over. You've made enemies. Ali met her gaze without blinking. In the months that followed, the Carter name changed. Marcus was no longer invisible. People nodded to him in the halls. Ali received offers, scholarships, mentorships, interviews. Harvard sent a letter that made her father cry at the kitchen table. But Ali didn't chase the spotlight. Instead, she launched the Carter Foundation, dedicated to medical accountability and training young people in underserved communities. She funneled her newfound influence into something bigger than revenge. Victor Moretti donated the first $1 million. Not as the crime boss the city whispered about, but as a father repaying a debt no money could cover. The last time Ali stood outside St. Gabriel, she looked up at the glass tower gleaming in the sunlight. The place where they'd laughed at her. The place where she'd uncovered the rot. Marcus stood beside her. You sure you're ready for all this? Ali's smile was small but fierce. I was born ready. They just never saw me coming. And with that, the janitor's daughter walked into history.